Welcome to Tees Voices, telling the stories of the people in our NHS community.
So we are delighted to have Harvey and Lauren with us today, who work in the iMSK team from North Tees, and it's the first time we've met you, so it's really good. I've heard lots about you, and I'm very excited to hear what you've got to say with the podcast today, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So do you want to introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit, because you've been doing a lot of hard work around some of the student placements and things like that. So did you want to tell us a little bit about what you've been doing, what impact it's having?
My name's Harvey. I'm one of the senior physiotherapists in MSK and community pain management.
My name's Lauren. I'm one of the static fives in iMSK physiotherapy.
And essentially, we're part of the team, or there's three of us. Seb's unfortunately not in today, and we sort of organise all the student placements, whether that be university, T-level work experience, or anyone else. We organise it for MSK physiotherapy at North Tees and Hartlepool, and it's a relatively big job because, especially in our trust, and I think for most trusts it'll be the same, MSK is the biggest student department, especially for physiotherapy students. We get more than any other department. It was roughly around 2 years ago when I first stepped into the student organisation role. I was with my colleague Jackie at the time, and we were running into a massive issue in the fact that, and this is a good thing, more people want to do physio than ever before. So the cohorts of physiotherapy students were increasing massively. We've seen cohorts of anywhere between 60 to 90 students per year. Obviously, it's a great thing because we need more physios, but at the same time, it's a bit of a nightmare for us because then the uni are we need you to take on X amount of students. And we've always run placements the same way for the past God knows how many years, where we have one clinician, one student. That student follows that clinician for the 5-6 weeks. That clinician sets up the student's clinic. They do all that for them. If that person isn't in, they then have to organise a timetable for who that student's going to shadow. And often we were taking 4 and 5 students on at once, which then led to an issue with 2 educators were up trying to timetable for 2 students, when it just ended up being a big mess because you'd ask someone, can you take my student? They're like, no, I've already got a student. It just became a bit of a nightmare to control. And then, in my opinion, from what I was seeing, there was a big variation in placements happening where some students were coming in, clinics were set up early, getting cracking on, seeing their own caseload, whereas other students, if that educator had been off for a couple of weeks or they were going off midway through, their placement became a bit more here, there and everywhere and a bit more chaotic. And we also, from a clinician point of view, there was a period of 20 weeks, where of those 20 weeks, 16 of them, I had a student with me. So I was back to back with students. And once again, it probably wasn't great on the student because student 3 who got me at the end of those 20 weeks wasn't probably getting the same energy and time as the student who got me in week 1. And for me, I felt pretty burnt out at the end of it as well. I was like, I can't do this anymore.
It's interesting because what you're talking about there is a lot of what we talk about in human factors. Cognitive overload, it can lead to incivility, can lead to burnout, can lead to mistakes happening and things like that. So what did you put in place then to mitigate all of these kind of things that you were noticing?
So that's where the idea of the Student Academy popped up. And the Academy, it's a very simple model. We take on 6 students at once. And instead of having a one-to-one educator, there's a generic timetable. They run their own clinics. The clinics are pre-set up. There's 6 students in one room, and there's 2 educators. This can be anyone from the entire team. Basically go and supervise the students in clinic. And then instead of just shadowing your educator, the timetable, so 2 days a week, they're shadowing anyone within the wider team. And then 3 days a week, they're sort of in clinic seeing their own caseload.
Yeah, so the shadowing can vary from the physiotherapists, from rotational 5s, static 5s to band 6, to our ESPs as well. That's shoulder specialists, knee specialists, our advanced assessment teams who predominantly diagnose, our FCPs, so they're getting a well-rounded shadowing experience as well. Educators, like Harvey said, it can be anyone in the team. We did originally stick to static 5s and above, but we've recently, due to clinicians and being a bit understaffed, we've allowed experienced rotational 5s now to be involved too. And we felt like that was a good way of introducing them to start stepping up as well and engaging with students and learning how to become a leader and guidance and things like that.
They do get a week of training as well. So the first week, we run our own training sessions because we appreciate not every student's just finished the MSK module at uni. So we typically run our own training to sort of get them up to scratch and get them up to date and ready for that first week of clinic?
Yeah, again, with the training week, we typically have 3 clinicians. We have an ESP, band 6, and then a band 5 there, so different experiences. And it's really good for clinicians as well, because I know from my experience when I've got it, being with an ESP, getting their outlook on things, it's really good for my learning as well. But each day they do something different, whether it'll be in upper limb training, spinal stuff, lower limb stuff, typical conditions. We're shaping that at the minute currently to try and make that a little bit better as well. But yeah, that's typically what that model looks like during the training week.
It's great to hear, because it sounds to me like that initial training that you're setting up for them, what it's doing is not only preparing them for then running their own clinics, which you can imagine is a scary kind of prospect for the students, but that initial training is probably setting up psychological safety so that the students feel as if they can ask questions and say, I don't know, and hearing likes of Lauren saying, oh, well, actually, I'm learning from this as well, makes the students realise that learning's continuous. It's all the time, regardless of how long you've been qualified for. And them hearing that from old, like staff members that have been doing the job, makes them realise that this is what the life of a physio is going to look like. It's a really good setup. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm absolutely blown away by this. As my last job as a PPF, as Alison knows, I desperately tried to implement something similar. I was looking at the CLIP model, collaborative learning and practice model, and it sounds like that's essentially what you have managed to do. So my hat is off for the fact that you have got this off the ground. How is it evaluating?
So we evaluate it through a few different ways. So at the end of the placement, we basically get feedback from the students. So they have their own evaluation form they do for the uni, and we rarely ever see them unless there's something like negative pop up in them, which rarely ever happens. So we don't ever get to see the positive feedback. We only get to see the negative from the uni. So what we've started to do is we've created our own student feedback form. So at the end of the placement, it's on Mentimeter, which is, you can sign up to it. It's quite easy to use, but you send them essentially a code. They log on with that code. We've got a series of questions. So we send out like a pre-placement pack. So how useful did you find the pre-placement pack? How did you find the training? How did you find the clinics? How did you find the shadowing? And we also ask them, how do you feel this compared to other placement models? Or how did your training compare to what you received in other placements? Because we want to know, is this basically effective? Do people feel this is a worthwhile idea? I think the big thing is every bit of student feedback we ever got is it's been a great placement experience. People who have done MSK before like the academy model because of like the independence it gives you. Because although we're there to supervise and we're watching and we're listening in, and students are coming out and we're questioning them on, so what have you found? Are you concerned about this? What have you? There is an element of they're in with a patient. There's not someone like stood over the shoulder. We're more like in the background, making sure everything's safe. So they like that autonomy. And that's sort of what you are, especially when we get students who are in third year about to be qualified. In a couple of months or a couple of weeks, this could be what you're doing for your job. You need to have that autonomy. So students really like that. They found the training useful. And the other big thing it's got is nothing's ever perfect. There have been bits and bobs where people have been like, oh, we felt this could have been useful in the training. I think the big one was like a note standardization, which we're working on. It's never easy, but we're working on. There were things about, could we look at more condition-based as opposed to just looking at what assessment tools are available? So we've modified our training to be more sort of clinical conditions-based as opposed to just general assessment. So it's really nice because you get the positive, but you also get from the people doing it, well, this would have been helpful for the rest of the placement if it came in earlier. Perfect, we'll try and get that in earlier. And from that, we've got like a student feedback log, so feedback's easier to access. And
from a clinician standpoint, so that's the student's perspective, clinicians, we're constantly self-reflecting on the model itself. So during placements, we have weekly student academy meetings via Teams. So anyone that can, they'll come on that's involved with students, they'll offer their feedback. And it's not just on students, it's how we're like developing relationships with them. We're running the academy, I suppose, and we get frequent feedback from other clinicians about what could be better, what's working well, things like that. So it's shaping all the time, it's changing all the time.
Do you know what you're saying is music to my ears, because literally the stuff that I teach people how to create environments where you improve on your team culture, your team dynamics, psychological safety, human factors. Everything that you do is exactly what we try to advocate for. The fact that you are asking for feedback and working on it and telling people what it is encourages people to understand that, look, we all are learning continuously. The culture that you're setting up in that room really does sound like you're setting it up lovely. It's brilliant. So can I ask, what's the plan for the future then? What's the future going to look like?
The current plan is where we run about sort of 12, 13 of the academies now. So we've got quite a lot of feedback. The big things at the minute are we're trying to revamp the training. So we had a revamp right at the beginning. We've had some feedback, some sort of things have emerged, but I really want to work on and build in the training. The other big thing is sort of what we want to do is we want to try and standardize things as much as possible. And so we're trying to introduce almost like a feedback document for educators based on what we're sort of seeing in sort of our weekly meetings. And listen, we're never going to have the exact same opinions on students when there's 20 odd people looking at the same student. People are going to see different things. And I think in one way that's valuable, but we also want to make sure the feedback we're giving is consistent between everyone. So more than anything, we're working on stuff for staff to use to make sure everything's standardized to a point. Those are the sort of key things we're working on.
Yeah, I think from a future perspective, we want it to be as successful as possible, where we're running back-to-back academies at the minute, so that's working well. We want that to continue without staff burnout and things like that. But also, hopefully, we can spread the word so other trusts can take on this as Student Academy, and hopefully they can try and change that for their placements and their different settings in different physiotherapy departments as well. I don't know how that would look in other departments, but again, it's somewhere to start, isn't it?
I think the other big one we often get asked about the future is, at the minute, we've got 6 students per academy just at Hartlepool because we don't have any room in Stockton. We don't have enough clinical spaces. My ideal would be eventually, because Stockton's our biggest waiting list, it's our biggest population of what we cover, get the academy based in Stockton, and then in the future have 2 academies, one running at Hartlepool, one running at Stockton, having 12 students. But before I scare the team leads, that's like 3-4 years away. That's well in the future, but I always like to get that out there.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. And your energy and your passion. And I think that when you're working with students, you have to constantly keep up with the next generation, everything that's going on. How do you keep yourselves motivated to keep going?
I think for me, I like a challenge. So if I didn't like a challenge, it's quite a big thing to set up. I just enjoy the challenge of it. If I didn't, I would step away from the role and let someone else do it.
Students are the future in physiotherapy, and I'm a big believer that we can shape how they are as clinicians and autonomous practitioners and things. And it does start with us. We're their educators, we're what they're looking up to in clinics and things like that. So for me, my motivation comes from ensuring we get the best physiotherapists coming through universities as possible. So yeah, that's my motivation.
Yeah, I think when you talk about other areas taken on for physiotherapists, I think it goes even wider than that as well. I think you're inspirational to, any models across the different professions. So I'm confident that our students are in very safe hands with you too, and it's been fantastic speaking to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming. I have thoroughly enjoyed spending some time with you, and I would love to come and see what you're doing over there. Thank you for joining us, and look after yourselves
and each other.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Till next time, you've been listening to Tees Voices.